Without warning, the solid earth falls away into a gulf of space and absolute silence. The mind bends in astonishment. Mountains thrust up from below, shimmering with iridescent colors that dissolve into the horizon. A singular gallery of the most monumental earth sculpture. The Grand Canyon. To confront this canyon is truly one of the most spectacular and humbling experiences that man may encounter on this earth. John Wesley Powell, whose expedition more than a century ago conquered the Colorado River, eloquently described the music of the Grand Canyon. The orchestra of wind in the pines at dusk, the call of the coyote, and the celestial song of the hermit thrush in amphitheaters fit for gods. While it is easy to be overwhelmed by the sheer immensity of the Grand Canyon, it is also the most revealing single page of Earth's history on the face of the globe. The exposed base rock is part of the Earth's original crust, a staggering 2 billion years old. The rocks layered above it remain our most nearly complete record of the eras of geological time. The limestone layer nearest the rim was the floor of an ancient sea and was formed from the remains of creatures of water and land that lived here long before dinosaurs roamed the earth. The sandstone layer was once desert, with great dunes piled high by the wind. The shale was once simply mud at the bottom of a shark-infested sea. The canyon was born of a rising earth and the stone-grinding power of the Colorado River. And each day the mighty river continues to carve deeper and deeper into the earth's crust. The Grand Canyon, located in northwestern Arizona, is 277 miles long, and the distance between its walls ranges from 18 miles to less than half a mile. In its awesome 10-mile-wide central section, the canyon averages a mile deep. 4 Empire State Buildings, standing one on top of the other, would still not reach the rim. This natural wonder is protected in the more than 1 million-acre Grand Canyon National Park. The Grand Canyon may be approached from either the north or the south rim. From Grand Canyon Village on the south rim, there is the 8-mile West Rim Drive that passes a number of superlative lookout points. Hopi Point, in particular, is famous for its sunset vista. In the other direction, the 25-mile-long East Rim Drive leads to Desert View. Across the chasm is the higher and more isolated North Rim. From the Grand Canyon Lodge on the North Rim, the 22-mile drive to Cape Royal offers extraordinary views of the canyon and the Painted Desert to the east. Point Imperial, the highest point on either rim of the canyon, provides breathtaking scenics. The Grand Canyon is nature's finest monument to the combined forces of uplift and erosion, and this Herculean earth sculpture has always challenged man's imagination. The earliest evidence of man's existence in the canyon, some 4,000 years ago, comes from deer-like figures made from willow shoots, which have been dated back to 2100 BC. Later inhabitants were Native Americans called the Anasazi, the Ancient Ones. They built homes and storehouses along the canyon walls and raised squash, beans, and corn. Indian legends speak of great floods that cut the canyon as a path to life beyond death. According to the Navajo sacred tradition, the Great Flood threatened to drown their ancestors when an outlet was formed by rushing waters. The Navajos survived the flood by being transformed temporarily into fish, and the outlet the floodwaters formed is the Grand Canyon. Today, the Havasupai tribe continues to inhabit the canyon. For hundreds of years, the Havasupai have survived by diverting the waters of Havasu Creek to irrigate their fields. The name Havasupai means people of the blue-green water, and the waterfalls and terraced pools along the creek add to the beauty of their canyon home. The brilliant turquoise water comes from the color of the sky. The color is reflected and intensified by the white bed of the stream and the white limestone mineral particles suspended in the water. The descendants of this proud tribe keep their traditions and culture alive and continue to practice their native customs. Rex Talusi is a member of the Havasupai Tribal Council.
Down here in Supai, we set aside one day where our children would enjoy what our fathers, our grandfathers, grandmothers used to play, like the stick games, the foot races, the games that were played a long time ago. And in this special day that is set aside, we call Indian Day. And during that day, we try to teach our young people the dances, the songs, the ways of our people. We have many sacred stories that are told in certain times of the year, and this portion is a very sacred story that is told among our people. The two pillars that you see standing in the middle of our village in silence, just like we, the people, would rather be silence. And they're standing there in the middle of our village, watching us, guarding the village, guarding the people, watching over its children. And should one of them fall someday, that means that the tribe will perish one day. But that day hasn't arrived yet, and hopefully it never will.
The first white men to see the Grand Canyon were the Spanish conquistadores of Coronado. They were guided to the south rim by Hopi Indians in 1540. Under the leadership of Captain Don Garcia Lopez de Cardenas, these soldiers of fortune viewed the canyon merely as an impediment in their search for the mythical 7 golden cities of Cibola. Finding no way across the canyon, the search was abandoned. Then came the Spanish missionaries, American trappers and explorers. But the canyon was unconquerable. They could not find a way down its sides and were turned away by the mocking smiles of its many magnificent sheer faces. In 1858, a bold young lieutenant, Joseph C. Ives, guided by Mojave Indians, led his small party of Army engineers into the canyon. In his report to the War Department, Ives wrote,
"Ours has been the first and will doubtless be the last party of whites to visit this profitless locality. It seems intended by nature that the Colorado River, along the greater portion of its lonely and majestic way, shall be forever unvisited and undisturbed."
Needless to say, he was wrong. Today, more than 3 million people a year come from around the world to visit Grand Canyon National Park.
Good morning and welcome to Grand Canyon National Park. You folks are here for the early rim walk. My name is Connie Rudd, and this morning we're going to be discussing a number of topics related to Grand Canyon. Our walk will take about an hour this morning. We'll be going along a level paved trail in the westerly direction, about 1/3 of a mile. Rangering has been a real personal commitment for me. I believe deeply in preserving national parks and everything that they stand for. The personal side of it is very satisfying. And it's a shared experience. It's something fresh and new for me every day. And seeing the light in their eyes as they come to understand a little bit about the story behind this grand scenery is all the perk that I need every given day as a park ranger. Something important about visits to places like this includes the opportunity to slow down a little bit. We seem to hurry so much in our day-to-day lives, and national parks offer the opportunity to sit quietly with the features that make them special. Sometimes we find that the English language does fail us in describing Grand Canyon. We've found some words that we hope are adequate, and sometimes I think perhaps the most precious words are single words. And if you find that you're at a loss for a description, perhaps you can just remember the word that the Paiute Indians used to describe Grand Canyon. It's a simple word. It's kaibab, and literally translated, kaibab means mountain inside out or mountain lying down. What we really hope is that people will care about places like this, all the national parks in this system, because they're part of our national heritage and they're a national treasure worth preserving. If they can come away from a place like this caring deeply about it and its future existence as it is today, then we've done our jobs.
The North Rim is farther from major highways and cities and is the quieter of the two rims. Although the North Rim is closed in winter by as much as 200 inches of snow, summers here are brief but very lush. The mule deer is one of the largest wild animals in the park, and a healthy antlered buck often weighs more than 200 pounds. Mule deer love to browse the leaves and twigs of shrubs, and their four-chambered stomachs are the key to their survival. The deer's anatomy allows it to fill up on choice greenery when the coast is clear, then retire to a safe, camouflaged hiding place, chew its cud, and let its complex inner system operate. In places, the forests give way to open mountain meadows displaying a colorful palette of indigenous wildflowers. Along the North Rim, the most impressive trees are the tall, copper-colored ponderosa pines. The bark on their massive trunks emits an intoxicating scent, somewhat like vanilla, and its wood, though soft, is quite strong. From Bright Angel Point, you get a close look at the hulking stone sculptures of Deva, Brahma, and Zoroaster temples. The size and exotic shapes of these stone towers inspired early explorers to invoke these Eastern spiritual names. Cape Royal, the farthest point out into the canyon from the North Rim, offers extraordinary views. The nearly 8,000-foot-high Vishnu Temple was once part of the rim. Isolated by erosion and attacked repeatedly by the forces of weathering, Vishnu has been sculpted down to its present distinctive shape. Angel's Window is a result of the erosive chisel of the elements that have created a hole in the limestone platform. Miles from the North Rim Lodge, along a well-paved road, is Point Imperial. At 8,800 feet, this lookout is one of the highest points in the Grand Canyon. Although the heavy snow shut down the North Rim, the lower elevation of the South Rim permits roads and accommodations to remain open all year round. Many feel that the canyon is at its best during the quiet mood of winter, when its peaks are dusted with snow. In the 1890s, the eminent naturalist John Muir visited the canyon and recorded his emotional response to it.
No matter how far you have wandered, or how many famous gorges and valleys you have seen, this one, the Grand Canyon of the Colorado, will seem as novel to you, as unearthly in the color and grandeur and quantity of its architecture, as if you had found it after death on some other star.
The South Rim is more easily accessible than the North Rim and has always attracted visitors in greater number.
Ran into them on your way in the park. They're the ones who work at the entrance station and Mather Campground. Anybody camping?
Stu Fritz is an interpretive ranger whose unique style draws crowds along the South Rim.
William Faulkner, the great American Nobel Prize winner, said that a mule will wait 20 years to kick its master once. A mule at the Fred Harvey Corral has a very dour expression. Their ears are down like this, and they stand like this. Hour after hour, like... Except when you get on them in the morning. Then their ears are straight up, and they grin like this. because they have the day worked out for you. The trail is cut along the rocks like this, so they go as close as they can to the wall. So the roots and rocks, you have to take this leg and put it over. They go around this side, and they take this leg and put it over like this. Except in those areas, like in the Redwater limestone, where the cliff drops 500 feet straight down. A mule weighs half a ton, so their big fat belly sticks out like this. And this is where your feet are. Looking straight down 500 feet. And you wonder if the animals are levitating or not. And the poor person, their knuckles on the pommel of the saddle are white like this. And you're gripping the saddle like this, the pommel, and your eyes are closed away from the cliff like this. And the mule will look back grinning more than ever. And when your eyes are closed and when your knuckles are just standing out white like that, the mule will skip a step.
Yet, with all the activities, solitude is never very far away. While many bypass the forests in their hurry to get a look into the abyss, the South Rim offers an interesting variety of trees. While the pinyon pines appear dwarfed and straggly next to the more impressive ponderosa, many Indians and frontiersmen have been saved from starvation by eating pinyon pine seeds. Today, these delicious and highly nutritious pine nuts are sold in gourmet stores around the country. The Gamble oak has developed an interesting communal mode of survival in this high, dry country. It spreads its roots horizontally and at intervals sends out shoots to form new trees. While this grove of Gamble oak may appear to be a group of independent trees, as one observer put it, they are all holding hands under the blanket. Their roots are interconnected. The South Rim provides superb lookouts for viewing the canyon. Yaqui Point marks the beginning of the Kaibab Trail that connects the two rims. Although the rims are as little as 600 feet apart at certain points, the hike along this trail from the rim down to the canyon floor and up the other side is 21 rigorous miles. The most spectacular wildflower along the Kaibab Trail is the agave plant. The agave lives between 10 and 30 years and spends its entire life preparing to bloom. When ready, it will produce a bud that becomes a stalk and grows upward at a breathtaking rate of 3 to 10 inches a day until it reaches a height of 10 to 20 feet. Flowers bloom in clusters at the top of the stalk, and then the plant, exhausted, dies. Although little seems to grow on the exposed faces of limestone and white sandstone along the trail, there is enough to support the bighorn sheep that live there. The sheep, which John Muir called the noblest creature living in wild nature, are spectacular climbers, owing to their peculiar foot construction that enables them to grip rocks and take advantage of tiny crevices. Down on the canyon floor, the most noticeable thing is the heat. During the summer, the temperature often reaches 120 degrees. Most of the rain that falls into the canyon evaporates on the way down, and much of the life here depends on the river and tributary streams for moisture. The plant life close to the river consists mostly of tough desert veterans, sparsely leaved and often thorny. Generally, each plant here grows a considerable distance from its neighbors. In a sense, each has claimed its territory, spreading its roots to absorb all the available water. New plants spring up when an old one has died. The canyon floor is alive with creatures such as the scorpion. The pink rattlesnake is unique to the canyon, and it is thought that its pink scales are an evolutionary adaptation that allows it to blend into the colorful rocks where it lives. The chuckwalla is a foot-long lizard with dark-colored skin that hangs like loose clothing over its potbelly. The chuckwalla is an unusual reptile since it is a vegetarian, not an easy thing to be in the Grand Canyon. When startled, this timid creature will scurry into a nearby rocky crevice. It then gulps as much air as it can hold, inflating and wedging its body in so tight that it is difficult to pull out. Another way to travel between the two rims is by mule.
Thank you. Good morning.
Ron Clayton is in charge of the mule trip at the Grand Canyon and tries to prepare people for the adventure.
Folks, I got a little information for you and a few instructions this morning that'll make this trip better on all of us. We get people here that have never petted a dog before, let alone they want to ride a mule in and out of the Grand Canyon. Most of them are not aware of how physically stressing this trip is. This is not a pony ride at Disneyland. This is not a merry-go-round at the fair. You got to do something besides sit in a seat and look out the window. We stress two things this morning. Number one being safety. Number two is having a good time. We don't jeopardize one for the other. And a good, tight, compact group is 95% of the safety aspect of this trip. I'd rather make you mad, I'd rather hurt your feelings, I'd rather spoil your vacation than get somebody hurt today. If you're a little apprehensive this morning, you're in real good company. So is everybody else. Me more than most. These mules are going in that canyon today because you want to go, not because they want to go. They've been there. Sit up straight in your saddle, keep your mule up close to the mule in front of you. Pay attention to what your guide says today, and we'll try to show you a trip you never forget. I would say that this is probably one of the most unique animal operations there is in the world. Needless to say, again, we get so many people that's of very little experience that these mules have to be foolproof. And mules come in all sizes and colors and all personalities. And we spend a great deal of time testing them and riding them and training them and pulling out the right kind of personalities that we need here. Folks, on a lighter note this morning, some of these mules tend to walk the edge. Don't worry about it. Nothing you can do about it. We train them that way so you get a good view down there.
To descend 6,000 feet from the rim to the river is, in terms of climate, the same as traveling 3,000 miles from central Canada to the deserts of Mexico.
Anytime that we stop these mules for one reason or the other, we like these mules to stop crosswise in the trail with their heads looking into the canyon. Folks, these mules have got eyes on this end, they got no eyes on the other end. We want the end with the eyes on it closest to the edge. We want these mules to know where they're at today. If that mule's turned around here eating grass off the side of the bank and about half asleep and not paying attention to where he's at, and one of these deer or sheep kick a rock slide off in front of him, that mule's gonna run backwards, and you going with him. It's probably one of the most unique jobs in the world because it's the only one in the world. And I suppose I have a sense of pride in our safety record. We have an excellent safety record. And in our mules, they're good mules. I am proud of that, make no bones about it. I really enjoy this. I think probably some of the biggest gratification that I get is taking older people in, and again, handicapped people. But people that can't get in there any other way and may not ever have a chance to get back and get in there. That's fun.
I'll get everybody off. You probably want to take your raincoats with you. We can't tell about the rain here.
Overnight trips from the South Rim stop to spend the night at Phantom Ranch in the canyon's inner gorge. Built in 1922, the privately operated cabins and restaurant have been lightheartedly described by its proprietors as the lowest down ranch in the world. The Spaniards named it Rio Colorado, the Red River. The Colorado River, relentless carver of canyons. From dizzying heights in the Rocky Mountains down to the Gulf of California. For more than 1,400 miles, the mighty river cuts deep into the land, excavating 19 major canyons, including this one. The Colorado and its tributaries drain a land area of 240,000 square miles, and its load of silt and abrasive materials drops a total of some 10,000 feet in its descent from mountains to sea. Today, the river is harnessed by the Glen Canyon Dam above the canyon and the Hoover Dam below it. Flash floods undermine cliffs, dislodge boulders, and tear down slopes. Although the canyon might appear as if it had been produced by some sudden and cataclysmic occurrence, in fact, the events that produced it were simply part of the slow, orderly process of erosion. Geologists continue to debate exactly how the canyon was formed. A popular theory called stream piracy points to events that occurred 65 million years ago. At that time, the plateau's flat surface began to bulge upwards from internal pressure. Geologists call this upwarping. As the Kaibab Plateau gradually rose, the elevation both altered the flow and increased the rate of flow of the rivers in the area. West of the upwarp, the Hualapai River drained into the Gulf of California, as the Colorado River does today. East of the plateau, the ancestral Colorado River flowed southeastward toward the Gulf of Mexico. Another upwarp of land, 13 million years ago, blocked the ancestral Colorado and formed the huge Lake Bittahoochee. Meanwhile, the Western River began to chip away at the Kaibab Plateau by a process called headward erosion. Finally, the Hualapai River cut its way completely across the plateau and captured the ancestral Colorado in a maneuver called stream piracy. All the water then began flowing west, and the modern Colorado River was born about 5 million years ago. The huge lake dried up and disappeared, and the Colorado River began to carve out the Grand Canyon. It is ironic that from the rim, the Colorado River looks like a silver thread glinting distantly at the bottom of the canyon, a decorative ornament to the massive gulf. Yet for those few who successfully found a way down the canyon, this terrifying river was always the end of the line. Then, on May 24th, 1869, a one-armed Civil War veteran, Major John Wesley Powell, accepted the challenge of the raging white water. Schoolteacher, botanist, geologist, and surveyor, the 35-year-old Powell selected 9 men, hunters and tough former soldiers, to accompany him on his 3-month journey across 270 miles. They set off in small wooden boats to explore the unmapped Colorado, one of the most powerful and dangerous rivers in the world. The trip down the river is still one of the greatest adventures in the American wilderness experience. Today, river guides often read from Powell's original journal of the trip to heighten the sense of re-experiencing the historic journey.
May 30th, 1869. This morning we are ready to enter the mysterious canyon and start with some anxiety. The old mountaineers tell us it cannot be run, but all are eager for the trial, and off we go.
In the first week out, the small expedition faced its first real test.
Soon our boats reach the swift current. A stroke or two, now on this side, now on that, and we thread the narrow passage with exhilarating velocity, mounting the high waves whose foaming crests dash over us. Plunging into the troughs until we reach the quiet water below. Then comes a feeling of great relief. Our first rapid is run.
In the first month, one of the 4 boats was smashed to bits. Often the men had portaged the boats for miles over rocks, and making camp became a welcome diversion from the constant battle with the river. But the trip was not without its rich rewards.
August 3rd, start early this morning. The river, sweeping around bends, undermines the high cliffs in places. Other wonderful features are the many side canyons or gorges that we pass. August 9th, and now the scenery is on a grand scale. The walls of the canyon, 2,500 feet high, are of marble, of many beautiful colors, often polished below by the waves, and sometimes far up the sides, were showers of washed sands over the cliffs. We call it Marble Canyon.
In this instance, Powell was mistaken. This is not marble, but hard limestone formed in a fossil accumulation from the bed of a shallow, ancient sea. Though it is actually gray-blue limestone, its surface is stained by iron salts washing out of the shale above, so it is called red wall limestone. Powell marveled at the red wall cliffs and was especially taken with one particular spot.
The river turns sharply to the east and seems enclosed by a million brilliant gems. On coming nearer, we find fountains bursting from the rock high overhead, and the spray in the sunshine forms the gems which bedeck the wall.
As they entered the deepest part of the canyon, they knew they were about to encounter the most difficult part of their journey.
August 13th. We are now ready to start our way down the great unknown. There is no hesitation. We step into our boats, push off, and away we go. First on smooth but swift water. Then we strike a glassy wave and ride to its top, down again and into the trough, up again on a higher wave, until we strike one just as it curls back and a breaker rolls over our little boat. Still on we speed, shooting past projecting rocks, till the little boat is caught in a whirlpool and spun around several times. What there may be below, we know not. So we listen for falls and watch for rocks, stopping now and then to admire the gigantic scenery.
Powell's account tells of lost supplies, hunger, and 3 men who abandoned the expedition and were never seen again. Finally, on August 29th, 2 battered boats carrying 6 men emerged from the Grand Canyon into safe waters.
Now the danger is over. Now the toil has ceased. Now the firmament is bounded only by the horizon, and what a vast expanse of constellations can be seen. The river rolls by us in silent majesty. The quiet of the camp is sweet. Our joy is almost ecstasy. We sit till long after midnight, talking of the Grand Canyon, talking of home.
The news of Powell's adventure spurred the nation's interest, and a tourist industry rapidly developed. As mining and lumber interests exploited the resources of the area, efforts to preserve the canyon as a national park also began. After a visit in 1903, President Theodore Roosevelt took up the cause and established the Grand Canyon National Monument in 1908. Roosevelt advocated preservation of the unspoiled wilderness when he said, "Leave it as it is. You cannot improve on it. The ages have been at work, and men can only mar it." An act of Congress in 1919 established the Grand Canyon National Park, and in 1975, President Gerald Ford signed an act that doubled the size of the park. The Grand Canyon of the Colorado River is indeed one of the genuine natural wonders of this world. Standing at the top of the rim, there is a silence that is nearly overwhelming. It is a silence that makes you want to whisper. It is moving and unforgettable. A performance of nature in the amphitheater of the gods.